This is Gene Bailey. If you're unfamiliar with the guy, he's a far-right extremist, absolutely loves Donald Trump, would do anything for the guy. And he's on Kenneth Copeland's Victory channel. So he pushes far-right extremist Christian nationalist ideals through this entire TV show. And he kind of frames it as a news show, even though it's very obviously not. So I want to give this a listen, see what they have to say for themselves. The title of this one is We're in a Job 38:11 moment. I haven't read that scripture, but I'm sure they'll tell us what it is. So let's give this a listen, see what these nutter butters of epic proportions have to lay down for us. And while we do, we're going to play a game. I'm playing Breath of the Wild at this immediate moment, Breath of the Wild 2, but I'm going to switch to Mario in a couple of minutes. It should just be in the background, won't bother you too much if you've never played it or whatever. All right, let's listen to this.
Look at this tweet. What happened in New York City, Kamala Harris said they had the right to protest, so we're all supposed to just accept this. Hamas supporters in New York City surrounded Grand Central Station, attempting to breach the outer doors to reach police officers sheltering inside.
Okay, now let me just step back here. What did Kamala Harris have to do with any of this? Neither of these people are Kamala Harris. What did he say about Kamala Harris?
Rick, I want to show you what happened. Look at this tweet. What happened in New York City, Kamala Harris said they had the right to protest, so we're all supposed.
Oh, so just some random guy says Kamala Harris says they had a right to protest. Yeah, people have a right to protest. Is this new to you? Is this the first time you've heard of the First Amendment? Our right to protest? What is going on in these people's heads? This is a fundamental American value that we have had since day one. We are allowed to protest. Like, I guess disregarding it, completely forgetting that protest is a part of our national identity. Kamala Harris said they had the right to protest. Yeah! Is this news to you? People can protest. And then they say, so we're all supposed to just accept this. If they're protesting peacefully, yeah, you are. Are people protesting peacefully? Is that what's happening right now? Hamas supporters, this is another little conflation they're doing here. Hamas supporters are not the same as pro-Palestine protesters. So I assume this is actually people who are horrified by what Israel is doing. So I'll just call them pro-Palestine protesters. Pro-Palestine protesters in New York City have surrounded Grand Central and are attempting to breach the outer doors to reach police officers sheltering inside. That did not happen, actually. I remember this. Grand Central is a public place where anybody is allowed to go. Anybody is perfectly free to walk in and out of Grand Central, and that's what happened. People showed up to Grand Central in shirts that said not in our name. I think it was a massive Jewish group that did this. And I guess these people didn't like the fact that people were simply peacefully protesting. There was no violence. There was no trying to bust in, breach the outer doors, because the doors are open. They're unlocked. You walk in. This is probably a picture of them walking in, about to open the door to enter or something. I have no idea what we're even looking at here. Or if this is even from an event related to Palestine. I have no idea. I guess they have a flag there, so. Anyway, these people are just psychotic and insane and desperate to conflate their moral fuck-ups with the left. They want to make it out like the left is responsible for everything that they have actually done. This is insane.
Supposed to just accept this. Hamas supporters in New York City surrounded Grand Central Station, attempting to breach the outer doors to reach police officers.
They don't have to attempt to breach. They can just walk in.
Sheltering inside. As you look at the video.
Yeah, actually, interesting. I don't know what I'm looking at, but let's find out what this is for sure, because I'm suspect. Palestinian protesters, Grand Central kicking door. Okay, Daily Mail has an article on this, and New York Post, so it's spreading around the right-wing echo chamber. J-Post also, far right, effectively. Well, not far right necessarily. An extremely pro-Israel, anti-Palestine network. Washington Examiner, again, complete nonsense. I was hoping to find a breakdown of what we're looking at on Reuters or AP News fact checks. I trust those two pretty well. Protesters shut New York's Grand Central seeking Gaza ceasefire. This is October 29, 2023. Yeah, so this timing looks about right. Hundreds of protesters demanding a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas forced the closure on Friday of Grand Central Terminal, one of New York City's major transit hubs, the MTA said. Grand Central Terminal is closed until further notice due to a protest urging commuters to use alternate stations and plan for extra travel time. Mourn the dead and fight like hell for the living, read one banner raised inside the building. Okay, interesting. Images on social media showed protesters pouring out of the train station and onto 42nd Street, Midtown Manhattan, and a large crowd being detained by law enforcement. The group Jewish Voice for Peace, okay, interesting, which organized the demonstration, posted a video on Instagram showing police in the station escorting a long line of protesters who were wearing shirts reading "Ceasefire Now" and "Not in Our Name," with their arms secured behind their backs. Oh yeah, I saw that. I remember seeing that. Hundreds of Jews and allies are getting arrested in what is likely the biggest mass civil disobedience New York City has seen in 2 decades, the group wrote in the Post. Israel's military widened its air-ground attacks on the Palestinian enclave of Gaza on Friday. Hamas, Palestinian militant group that rules Gaza, said its militants were ready to confront Israeli attacks with full force. Interesting. Okay. So Reuters was portraying the situation as it really is, with Israel as the aggressors. Let me look on AP News. Does AP News have a different take on this? This was released October 28th. 200 detained. Yes, okay. This is the event I was talking about. Here's a picture of all the protesters in Grand Central. These were Jewish people. A sea of hundreds of protesters filled the main concourse of New York City's famed Grand Central Terminal during the evening rush hour Friday, chanting slogans and unfurling banners demanding a ceasefire as Israel intensified its bombardment of the Gaza Strip. Wearing black t-shirts saying "Jews say ceasefire now" and "Not in our name," at least 200 of the demonstrators were detained by New York Police Department officers and led out of the train station, their hands zip-tied behind their backs. The NYPD said the protesters were taken briefly into custody, issued summons, and released, and that a more exact number of the detentions would be available Saturday morning. Some protesters hoisted banners as they scaled the stone ledges in front of the leaderboards listing departure times. Oh, Jesus. If you're wondering what they're talking about, I can't blow this picture up, unfortunately. Not really, but where my mouse is, bottom left, this is what they're saying they scaled. I'm not seeing anybody scaling this. These are the boards. I've been to Grand Central a billion times. I'm not seeing anything like that. What are they talking about? I'm not actually seeing any of that stuff. Now, I don't know where they got this footage. I don't know if this is even from the same protest. I'm extremely skeptical of what these people say. Believing a word out of their mouth is risky, so just be careful. But all right, let's continue here.
Police officers sheltering inside.
They got in. I mean, everybody was inside. There was no sheltering inside happening or whatever, apparently.
As you look at the video there, Pastor Hank, you see this. I mean, the police are sheltering in place. This doesn't instill confidence in the American.
Oh, dude, I love how they suddenly have a huge problem with something like this, what they're portraying here, if it's even real. When they downplay what happened on January 6th like nothing else. These people are shameless.
American people.
No, it doesn't. And first of all, anything that Cackling Kamala says...
Cackling Kamala. Her name is Kamala, not Kamala, but okay.
Who can really take it serious. You cannot tell me that that is a peaceful protest trying to get their point across in a peace.
Okay, people kicking doors is not peaceful. I don't know if that's from the same protest. I don't know what was going on in that immediate moment. All I know is that these people like to strip away all context and lie about situations brazenly. Real Pumpkin J, permanent resident, green card holder who can work and draw benefits is eligible, is based on the same criteria as a citizen, has to file paperwork if they're leaving for a few months so they're allowed back. Naturalized citizen, eligible for the same, plus rights to vote, run for office, jury duty, etc., and doesn't need to worry about leaving and then being able to return. Same as a natural-born citizen, except for presidency, can be stripped from citizenship. Interesting, okay. Permanent residents stay in the U.S. on the basis of a ton of background work. I had a stash of paper several inches tall by the time I got done to include health checks, etc. before immigrating. Wow. The immigration process here is pretty stringent. It's very difficult to do. I don't trust it anyway because it's coming from Flashpoint. Same. I don't trust a word out of their mouths. Violent protest is not okay. It's not okay when the left does it, not okay when the right does it. If this is actually portrayed accurately, which I doubt, but if it was, I denounce that. See how easy that is? That's wrong. That's evil. That's disgusting. I do not stand for that under any circumstances. Can you say that about January 6th, which was very obviously violent? Of course not. These people are shameless. Poor Miki doesn't have the same balance she used to. I think I'm chalking it up to the phenobarbital that she takes. I think that she has a really hard time, like, balancing, and she falls a lot because of that, and it's kind of sad. But I'll take care of her. I will lift her up and put her down as long as it takes. Anyway, all right, let's continue on here.
Peaceful way that they're upset about whatever. This is an act of violence, and you can feel the spirit. If you go back at the early part of this show, and I want to encourage the Flashpoint watchers to do that, go back and look at the video clip we showed about people right now that are standing, praying, believing God for Israel, even for Palestine. And they're gathering. You don't see the violence. You don't see them defacing, to Rick's point, the history of our country by our statues. And I saw something, Pastor Gene, that was an absolute outrage. Here we just absolutely honored our veterans, those who fought for our country, who shed their blood. And it's because of what they did, our veterans, that it gives people a right to voice their opinions in a peaceful way, not like Rick said, where our founding forefathers acknowledged that there's those that would come and be obnoxious. And
dude, they love using military people, veterans or whatever, as a prop, basically, as a prop to work to their advantage. It is honestly completely shameless. It's just ridiculous, man.
And dangerous and such. I saw a pole that had the American flags on it with the different other flags, Palestinian flags. And the American flag fell, and they began to stomp on it and deface our flag.
Okay, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't trust a word out of his mouth. But either way, guess what, Hank? That is our American right to do. As you'd say, our God-given right. We can do whatever the f we want with that flag. You know why? Because we have something called freedom of speech in this country. That's why. Dude doesn't seem to understand what that even means, let alone stand for it. He certainly doesn't seem to stand for it. It's just absurd. You know, back in the, what was it, the 70s, 80s maybe, 90s? I don't remember. The right was using one of those wedge issues to make it seem as though the left was absolutely insane. They do this stuff all the time. I've seen it a billion times. So this wedge issue in this case was, should you be allowed to burn the flag because the left is burning the flag? Of course, they weren't, but, you know, they wanted to portray it as like the left is trying to burn flags and blah, blah, blah. It's constant. Everybody's trying to burn flags on the left. And people claimed on the right that this was illegal. They should not be allowed to burn flags, which blows me away. Is that not freedom of speech? If anything is freedom of speech? And so the right was protesting that and saying, no, you're not allowed to burn flags, blah, blah, blah. And it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court decided, yes, you are allowed to burn flags if you so please. You know why? That's part of freedom of speech, baby. That's what it's all about. You want freedom of speech? Here it is. You can do whatever you want with this flag. That was just one of many little issues that the right tried to use to freak out moderates and make them think the left is absolutely unglued from reality. Here's another one that the right used. The KKK, specifically, claimed that you were going to be forced to marry a black person. It was going to be mandatory. If you didn't marry a black person as part of integration, then you're going to go to jail for it or whatever. And they would scare the shit out of little kids with this. They would tell them, you're going to be forced to do this if you stand for integration. And of course, you know, no little kids just want to like make their own decisions. So they say, oh, I don't want to be forced to do something, you know. That's just one more wedge issue that the right used. Or here's another. When you support LGBT rights, you are supporting people teaching gay things to children. You're teaching, basically, you're supporting pedophiles. That's what they're saying with this. That's the new wedge that they're trying to get in to freak out people in the middle. And we're just watching this happen all over again. It's an embarrassment.
Fell and they began to stomp on it and deface our flag.
See, they began to, who is they exactly? The left, presumably, began to deface and stomp on and defile the flag. And that's just not called for. That's just a step too far in their mind, right? Trying to get moderates over to their side. An embarrassment, man. Telling you.
And I want to say this should not be allowed in our country. That's not what our veterans fought for and signed up for.
Yeah, it is. It is, in fact, exactly what the veterans fought for and signed up for. For people to be allowed to say what they want, to do what they want, whether you like it or not. It's none of your goddamn fucking business what I do with my freedom of speech as long as I'm not hurting somebody else. Oh, and emotionally hurting somebody doesn't count. I'm not hurting you in any way, except maybe your feelings, by stomping on the flag or whatever. Not that I even want to do that. It's just not happening. I'm not doing that. I'm not hurting you. It's my, as he'd say, God-given right to do that. So, yeah, this is exactly what those veterans fought for. We don't protect freedom of speech so we can talk about apple pie. We can talk about apple pie with or without freedom of speech. We have freedom of speech laws to protect our right to say absolutely vile shit in other people's eyes. Me saying, I don't think God is real, is absolutely vile shit in Hank Kunneman's eyes. That's what's protected. That is what they fought for. if you don't see that, I can offer you no hope. What do I even do from here? We can find no common ground here.
Be allowed in our country.
Let's step back. Listen to this whole statement that he just made. This whole psychotic statement that he just made.
And the American flag fell, and they began to stomp on it and deface our flag. And I want to say this should not be allowed in our country. That's not what our veterans fought for and signed up for. And it's not what we, the people, are going to stand for. It needs to be, we are the United States of America. And if you don't like what we do here, then you can go find another place. If you're upset about something, you can say your point, but it needs to be in a peaceful, orderly manner.
Wow, listen to this guy. Suddenly, he is all for peace and order and not spreading hate or absolute psychosis or any of that other stuff. How about that? Suddenly, he's all about peace and love and happiness and acceptance. What happened to all that other shit that he said about gay people and about, well, not him specifically, but back in the 60s, about black people not being worthy of sitting in the same chamber in the church as the white people? What happened to all that?
All right, let me show you some good news. Look at this. No other country we've witnessed such a powerful assembly standing firmly against anti-Semitism. Today, France has spoken to the world. This was November 12th. A vast, diverse, universalist crowd united to uphold the fundamental values of the French Republic. I mean, you see this, Lance? This was a big deal. I must admit, I was a little surprised to see France coming to the front.
Yeah, and by the way, you asked a very good question a moment ago, Gene, and it deserved an answer. Look at CAIR, C-A-I-R, the Council on American and Islamic Relationships.
Oh boy, these people absolutely hate CAIR, Council on American Islamic Relations. I don't know why I said relationships. It's just relations. During the big Muslim fear-mongering campaign of the 2000s, after 9/11 took place, everybody was all freaked out by Muslims. And CAIR became the target of all kinds of insane attacks. Extremist nutcases were threatening them and all kinds of shit. In fact, the KKK actually targeted CAIR heavily in their propaganda. And when I lived in this little sundown town called Milton, West Virginia, I got a KKK pamphlet thrown at my door. Let me show you. Hold up. This is the front of the pamphlet that I received. It came in a bag of rice. The rice was so that it was weighted so they could throw it from a car door. And I opened up the the little KKK pamphlet here. Just wanted to see what it had to say. On the front, original Night Riders, Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. Interesting that they were advertising in my town, right? And on the back, lo and behold, they actually mention CAIR, Council of American Islamic Relations. Everything on here that they say about CAIR is completely twisted out of proportion and warped and insane. Not accurate at all, but when has that ever stopped the KKK, right? It says, Islam isn't in America to be equal to any other faith, but to become dominant. The Quran should be the highest authority in America and Islam the only accepted religion on earth. Omar Ahmed, chairman of the board of CAIR. I don't even know if that's true. I doubt it. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe CAIR is actually a bad organization. I have no fucking clue. But the fact that they're being so heavily demonized by these people tells me that they're certainly not as bad as they're portraying. So anyway, listen to this guy repeat KKK talking points. By the way, I got that pamphlet about 15 years ago.
Look at CAIR, C-A-I-R, the Council on American and Islamic Relationships. Wouldn't surprise me that they were largely behind the organizing of the sentiment that you're seeing displayed. And that,
like, it's not a secret who is behind the organizing. the Jewish Voice for Peace. Jews who were disgusted by what's happening were behind it.
That footage I had not seen before, the kicking in of the doors. Were you saying that there were police behind the barricades there and these people were kicking? Because if that's the
Yeah, that's what he said, but it's not true.
Again,
case,
guys, roll it again, guys, so they can see it.
If that's
the police
case,
were inside. They were inside that.
they were inside. So I would say
They were trying to get to
it's
him
a
right there.
shame. Those men.
Okay, I do see police officers on the other side of the door. I don't even know if this is from the same protest or what's going on here. I don't know who these people are. I have no clue what's happening. I do know that Flashpoint is full of liars, so take it with a grain of salt.
Men that are kicking in the doors are the terrorists that need. When you've got this goofball administration.
Those doors are really, really old, and it's hard to watch them kicking them. I don't like that at all, but okay.
And the FBI hunting down conservative Catholics and people that went to
Hunting down conservative Catholics? I mean, they're portraying them as Hamas, right? Hamas is hunting down conservative Catholics? Come on.
January 6th. These are the people you should be arresting, and they should be actually very closely examined for whether or not they're connected to cells in the United States that are one step away from terrorism.
These people are insane. Get help, for real.
Okay, Rick, I get your thoughts. Go ahead.
I got to, man, especially since you played the video again. It just reminds me, the lousy excuse for a commentator, Chris Cuomo, saying back when they were burning cities all over America, BLM and Antifa, he said, show me.
Antifa? Is that what he said? Antifa?
Where it has to be peaceful. So just in case Chris still hasn't seen it, I want to show him where it says it has to be peaceful. It's right there in the First Amendment. The right of the people peaceably to assemble. I mean, that's the whole.
Okay, I don't know if what he's saying is even real. I don't know if whoever he's referring to said that or whatever. But yes, peacefulness is a prerequisite to protest, and I believe that it should be peaceful. Every protest should be peaceful. And I denounce any protests that are not peaceful. Period. Full stop. Now, my question for you. Are you going to denounce January 6th the same way that I denounce non-peaceful protests?
Point is that we're able to petition our government for a redress of grievance, assemble, and do those things peacefully. So, yeah, Lance is exactly right. And I think we should be calling on Congress to investigate who's funding these things. If you're the one that's supporting those things and you continue to support something like an Antifa, or in this case, now you've got
Antifa. He's calling it Antifa. Why? Why is he doing this? I don't understand.
These pro-Palestinian groups. It's going to come from the same sources, I bet you, same money.
Yeah, all right. I want to show
that George Soros money, right?
you. There's always, we report the news, here on Victory News and Flashpoint. We tell you what's going on, but it's always what's behind, like what Lance talked with CAIR, C-A-I-R, and thank you for that. I'm going to research that on my own. But look at this tweet.
It's a KKK talking point. If you want to, and a target, a KKK target, obviously. I showed you a Ku Klux Klan pamphlet demonizing CAIR. So, yeah, I suppose if you want to, be linked to the KKK and the things that the KKK has to say about people, sure.
Tweet 5, guys. John Hassan, look at the events here. The next one, tweet 5. October 22nd, Blinken says we'll be prepared if Iran proxies attack U.S. troops. October 25th, the White House says Iran is actively facilitating attacks on U.S. troops. November 13th.
That was happening. Yeah, Iran was facilitating attacks on U.S. troops. That's true.
Iran proxies have attacked U.S. troops 52 times. November 13th, Jake Sullivan says, well, we'll respond if proxies continue attacking. Lance, is this administration this week that we won't respond?
Okay. Do they think they're not responding to Iran? Just because they're responding either diplomatically with diplomatic attempts or behind closed doors, or maybe the plan to respond is just simply not public or whatever, doesn't mean it's not happening at all. These people are honestly, like, say this with complete peace and love. I don't like insulting people. I'm trying to make this an honest assessment here and not an insult. Dumb as dog shit. Or, other possibility, simply propagandists, and they know what they're doing. I'm actually leaning toward that one.
Yeah, Donald Trump put organizations like the ones that are operating in Yemen on the terrorist list. And the first thing Joe Biden did, in a kind of an idiotic frenzy to undo everything Trump ever did, he took the Yemenis terrorists off the list of.
Okay, I don't even know if that's true, and Biden did not attempt to undo everything Trump ever did. But maybe that's why Trump should have worked within the bounds of the legal system rather than just signing executive order after executive order. Guess what? Next guy in line has the ability to sign executive orders just like you did and erase all of the progress that you made. That's why you should not rule by executive order. It should be through the legal system, the courts, and preferably Congress, actually.
Terror groups, and they're the ones that are firing on our bases in Syria and in Iraq, places that Trump was trying to actually get us out of and establish peace. And he came so close with the Abraham Accords.
No, he didn't. All right. A lot of people don't know what the Abraham Accords were. Let me tell you. Okay. Jerusalem is famously, okay, this specific thing is not part of the Abraham Accords. But just lay out what Trump did in the Middle East, in Israel and to Israel and all that other stuff. All right. Jerusalem is famously a contested city where both Palestine and Israel live and work and operate. Israel has East Jerusalem. Palestine has West Jerusalem. So they kind of share the city and they stay out of each other's sections, for a lack of a better term. They stay out of each other's hair and don't cross over there. And if they do cross, I mean, they don't send military over there. If a Jewish person wants to go over to the West, that's perfectly okay. They're allowed to do that, to my knowledge. And if a Palestinian wants to come over to the Israel side, they're allowed to do that. As long as citizenship exists or whatever, then, everyone's allowed to do whatever. But no soldiers in foreign territory, so soldiers are not allowed to cross over to Palestinian side of Jerusalem. Well, being the contested area that it is, and being the fact that Israel wants the rest of Jerusalem in their control, it was an aggressive move when Donald Trump moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, thus inflaming tensions, for lack of a better term, making things worse, making people hate each other even more and taking even more of a side. It just, that's one of the things Trump did that was not helpful or productive, that made things worse, directly worse. Now, the Abraham Accords is another thing Trump did, and that didn't really further much either. Trump claimed to have accomplished peace in the Middle East. In reality, what he did was no Arab nation in the area recognized Israel as a state. They just refused to recognize him as a state, plain and simple. The Abraham Accords made it so that Israel was viewed as a state by a couple of countries, United Arab Emirates, where Dubai is, and maybe one more, I don't remember which ones, which meant that they opened trade agreements with them. Now, trade agreements already existed with Israel before the Abraham Accords. It just came out in the open after, the Abraham Accords were pushed through and agreed to. So I think Trump got maybe 3 Middle Eastern states to recognize Israel as a government and decided to start doing trade with them out in the open. That's what the Abraham Accords did. It did not accomplish peace in the Middle East by any stretch of the imagination. So, anyways, I have to dispel this bullshit when I hear it, you know.
That Saudi Arabia actually was pressuring Biden to advance, and Biden goes in and screws it up by attaching a bunch of environmental left-wing stipulations on the...
Dude, what is he talking about? Biden was asked to advance on what? And how did he screw this up exactly?
Accords he wanted to see happening in the Middle East. We were so close to having a structured peace with Trump, and it's all flying apart, including the...
We were not close to having a structured peace with Trump. What?
Terrorist groups that are now firing at the United States. By the way, the unifying factor behind all of them is the Muslim Brotherhood. Write that one down and start researching that one, Flashpoint Army, because...
Oh, my God, dude. These guys do nothing but repeat KKK talking points, do they?
That's the unifying hub behind all the Islamic assaults.
All right, you know, what Lance...
It sounds like they're trying to, well, specifically Lance Wallnau here, is trying to revive anti-Muslim fear that heavily existed in the early to mid-2000s. It was, you know, it's kind of dissipated heavily. Anti-Muslim fear is not anywhere near as intense as it once was, but it's still there, and he wants more of it, I guess. Wow.
Lance is right. You know, you guys need to share this program everywhere you can, because we need to educate ourselves. The sooner we understand that we have to educate ourselves, that's the responsibility, the more that we'll understand the truth. So go do that. Let me show you this 6A there, Jason. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says, we'll be prepared if Iran escalates attacks. That's Face the Nation.
Wait, didn't he already do this? I'm lost. I thought he already covered this this whole thing.
Look at this. White House is Iran actively facilitating some attacks on U.S. military bases. I'm showing you this to prove we're not just making this stuff up. Then the next one.
I mean, where are these even from? I don't know what I'm even looking at. What website did you get this stuff from? He says, I'm showing you this show. We're not making it up. You very well could have made it up and then showed us a picture. And aside from that, nobody is denying that Iran was attacking U.S. bases. I mean, I think that problem is largely dealt with now. It's kind of gone away. But just because you didn't hear about all of the diplomatic actions that the United States took to deal with the issue does not mean that the issue is not dealt with. So I don't even know what to do with this.
5 updates. Pentagon says 52 attacks on U.S. forces in Iraq, Syria, and Israel surrounds Al-Shifa Hospital.
Look, they don't give a date even. They don't give a date for these articles, and they don't even give us a source on the articles. Where did you find these? Who wrote these? What's the reputability of these websites? For all we know, MSNBC could have written them. I bet you don't want your people thinking these came from MSNBC, right? So tell me, where did you find these pictures, these screenshots? These people are shameless.
And then here again, I'm going to show you that. Yeah, there it is. White House Sullivan. If Iranian proxies continue to strike U.S. forces, we will respond.
Oh, Zero Hedge. Oh, my God, dude. Zero Hedge is... It pretends to be a news network. In reality, it's actually a propaganda arm of the Russian government and was exposed as such. I cannot even believe they're quoting Zero Hedge. That honestly blows me away. Zero Hedge is famously part of the Alex Jones trial that took place. Because, what's his name? Oh my God, what the hell's his name? Owen Schroyer, one of the InfoWars hosts, spread complete fabrications and lies about all kinds of stuff, Sandy Hook and a bunch of other stuff, and it all sourced back to Zero Hedge, largely. And in the trial, they brought that up. They're like, why are you quoting from Zero Hedge when it's unequivocally been found to be like an arm of the Russian government? And he said, I just got the paper. I just handed the paper. I didn't know what it was from or who quoted it or whatever. That's all. It's not my fault.
You didn't check the source, right?
You're referring to Zero Hedge?
Right. You didn't check the source. You didn't check the author.
Well, I mean, I saw it said Zero Hedge on it.
Okay, that's the website, right?
Yes.
That's not where it originated from, though, right?
Well, to me it was.
Wasn't the question. It's not where it originated from, right?
Well, it was published on Zero Hedge. That's where I saw it. But obviously, I understand the author was, I believe, something called 0 Point Now.
Right. You think it's his real name?
I doubt it.
Right. So somebody called 0 Point Now writes something on a website called iBankCoin, which is then picked up by Zero Hedge. You do absolutely nothing to determine if any words in this have any accuracy at all, and you play it on air and make comments about it, right?
Yes.
You have no idea who that is, right?
No.
You have no idea if they're a reliable source or not, right?
No.
You've never heard of that person before.
Or at least so, no.
Pseudonym or whatever it may be, right? You definitely never run a story by 0 Point Now before, correct?
I don't believe so.
This was republished, as you said, by a website called Zero Hedge, right?
Yes.
Also, not a reliable source, correct?
Sometimes it is.
Sometimes it isn't, right?
Perhaps.
So let me ask you this: if you get something from a source and you look and say, you know, this source sometimes is reliable, sometimes they're way out there and unreliable. Isn't it incumbent on you to check it and do some sort of vetting before you put it on air?
Yes, I could have done a better job.
You could have done a job, right? You did nothing. You could have done something, right?
Well, I was live on air at the time, so it was given to me and I covered it.
Is it an excuse to say I didn't have time? Is that an excuse to defamation, to defaming Mr. Heslin? Is that an excuse to you? I just didn't have time?
Can you repeat or rephrase the question?
People on the right still quoting Zero Hedge? This blows my mind, dude. Okay. So what about Zero Hedge? Again, it's not even a news network. It's a social media account that's gained a following and basically is Russia.
And then here again, I'm going to show you that. Yeah, there it is. White House Sullivan. If Iranian proxies continue to strike U.S. forces, we will respond.
God, dude, it just, seriously, I can't stress enough how absurd it is for them to have displayed the name Zero Hedge on their, on their show. That truly, that shows me, like, their credibility level and how absurd these human beings are.
Rick, you see this happening. What, you heard what Lance said. What are we going to do? I know spiritually we got to take care of it, but in the natural, what are we going to do? In the natural.
Well, it feels like we're living out, it's Chamberlain. Don't cross this line. Okay, well, don't cross this line.
Well, I get, like, every source they gave, they didn't tell us who it was in most of them, but the ones that they did were extremist nutcases that are part of the Russian government. So, I don't even know what to do with this. The U.S. is dealing with the Iranian attacks situation, and I trust that they're doing a fine job with it.
Well, okay. I mean, that's essentially what it's, especially when you put the dates up there in that first graphic. It's just so it's embarrassing. But at the same time, Gene, I got to say, man, our military's in trouble. The left, the woke left, has had control of it for so long, and it's
the woke left has had control of the military.
It's a mess, and so I'm really concerned about our ability to respond effectively. And I'm praying, we talked about this a few weeks back. There's some generals that back when we had some other mishaps while Biden's technically in control, at least on paper.
Technically, at least on paper. You see all the hedging he's doing here? He doesn't want anybody to think that he believes that Biden is really in control. Because there's a small but vocal faction on the right that holds the belief that Trump is secretly the Messiah and is like running everything from behind the scenes. This is just an embarrassment.
Some generals that told me, listen, here's the good news. We do still have some really good guys, some really smart guys that are actually calling the shots at the ground level, and it gave me a little bit of peace. So I'm praying that that's the case, with what's going on in the Middle East, but clearly no action only invites them to take more action. And at this point, you miss a Ronald Reagan or a Donald Trump. Don't forget Carter, right? I mean, we're reliving the Carter years, especially with Iran, where
it's Iran. That's how it's pronounced, Iran. Does this guy know literally anything about the area, the people, the history, the whatever? Does he know anything about it? You know why Iran is as extreme and hateful about America as it is? I'll tell you why. I mean, I'm not justifying terrorism at all, and I'm not taking the side of Iran in any way. Iran is depressingly fucking terrible. And I'm just like, I'm disgusted by what Iran has become today. There was a golden age in Iran where people were not extremists, where people were just living their lives. Women didn't have to wear like burqas or any of that stuff. They were just doing their thing. And then the United States came in because they wanted as a vassal state. So they overthrew the effectively democratic system that existed at the time and installed a dictator, the Shah of Iran. And he was a monster. But he answered to America. Tortured people and just did horrible shit. Absolutely horrific shit to people. The Shah of Iran. He was bad. He's about as bad as it gets. And America did that. Eventually, the Khomeini family created like this uprising, started fighting against the Shah of Iran, and they were religious extremists, kind of like Osama bin Laden, and they led the resistance against American control of Iran. Unfortunately, I wish that see, that's the problem. Like when you're dealing with resistances like this against these types of situations, the resistances are usually zealots, extremists, nutcases, and inevitably when they gain power, that by definition means the new government is going to be an extremist government that fucking hates the people that were controlling them before. So the Khomeini family finally manages to take back control of Iran and installs a theocracy, a dictatorship that is a theocracy. Eventually, Iran moved to a period of time where they installed a president, but Khomeini was the religious leader and as such, directed everything. The current president, or who I think is the current president, Rouhani is his name. If he's still in charge, I'm not sure if he's still there or not. Rouhani was a little bit more moderate than Khomeini, the religious leader. By the way, the current Khomeini that's in control, he's I think the grandson of the one that fought in fought the United States in the 60s and 70s and 80s and whatever. He's still a completely extreme nutcase, though, is the point. But anyways, Khomeini hates the United States, and Rouhani has worked with the U.S. to do like the nuclear deal, for example, try to meet in the middle. Rouhani has stunted relations between the U.S. and Iran for generations now, sadly. So anyway, just a little bit of history about Iran. They hate us because of what we did. That was on us. That was our doing completely. Is it justified to be terrorists and attack and hate and blah, blah, blah? No, of course not. Absolutely not. Khomeini and Rouhani, well, Khomeini is an absolute monster. He's terrible. Rouhani, not great either. But there's no justification for all of that. So, give a little bit of context to the situation.
Carter, right? I mean, we're reliving the Carter years, especially with Iran, where we're so feckless, and you have a president with Carter. He literally sent over jets that were unarmed, as if that was going to be some show of force, and then called them back.
That is a show of force. People do that all the time. What are you talking about? Sent over jets that were unarmed? Yeah. That's a show of force. Like when North Korea launched missiles into the ocean, the United States sent a bunch of jets flying right next to the DMZ line in, between North Korea and South Korea as a show of force. Not to hit North Korea, just to show them that we're there, we're watching, and we support South Korea, That's how shows of force work.
We need a Reagan or a Trump to be able to respond to this effectively. And at this point, we better just pray that those generals on the ground can handle this despite the ineptitude of the people calling the shots at the White House and the Pentagon.
All right, so Pastor Hank, that leads me to what we need to do. We need to pray about this. I feel like you have something you wanted to share about that.
They need to pray about it.
We've got ineptitude. We've got a military that we're concerned about. Listen, just the few people that I know, there are a lot of people that left the military, went ahead and didn't re-up because of COVID, having to get the shot. So our military, to say it's not, there are still some good folks there in the military. I'm not saying the whole thing's bad, but yet we've been knocked back a bit. So Pastor Hank, I need you to pray about this. But also, I know you've got a comment there about how we move from here, and we got to stand in faith about it. But take us to that place.
Well, I think one thing that we need to do is we need to remind ourselves, and you that are probably a lot older than me, Pastor Gene and Rick Green, I think Lance is my age, would remember the day.
Wow, shot across the bow for old people, huh? That was nice of him.
When Libya attacked, do you remember that?
Yes.
And they asked Ronald Reagan, they said, Ronald Reagan, what are you going to do? And he said, we'll just watch. And
Dude, that was a flawless impression of Reagan. Oh my God. Has this guy been practicing his Reagan impression? How often does he use this that he is so skilled at imitating Ronald Reagan?
What are you going to do? And he said, we'll just watch. And it was shortly after that, man, they took out things within Libya. And
wait, I'm sorry. Wait a second. Are we talking about the same Ronald Reagan? Because there are multiple Ronald Reagans. I know a lot of Ronald Reagans, right? Is it the one that sold nuclear weapons to Iran and then gave the money to the Contras in South America, that terrorist group that was trying to take control? Is that the same one? The guy that gave nukes to Iran? Or missiles, I'm sorry, gave missiles to Iran at least. Is it the same guy? And then they pinned it all on Oliver North, who is now a Fox News contributor. Same guy? I'm not sure. Because like I said, lots and lots of Ronald Reagans. Okay, people are telling me it is the same guy. Just wanted to verify. Thank you.
And brought a sense of...
Just to correct, not nukes, but missiles. They sent missiles to Iran that they could use against their enemies.
Out things within Libya and brought a sense of absolute authority, order, and the fear of the United States military.
Yeah, and Ronald Reagan sure did that with Iran too, didn't he? All this talk about hating Iran and everything. Boy, Ronald Reagan really put Iran in their place.
Military and this great country, and it brought an end to it. And we are commanded to pray for our leaders. And there's one thing that I really feel like, and that is this. As we look at some of the things that are happening in the earth right now, and you're reading those headlines and you think, my goodness, you know, where is the restraint? Where is the preservation? You know,
where is the restraint? That's a good question. I suggest you ask your mother where the restraints are.
No, we are this close to World War whatever, or we're close to innocent people's lives that are going to be at stake. We have to understand that there is something so powerful, and it's the ecclesia. It's us, the body of Christ in the earth, that has an authority that Jesus said, I'm going to build this ecclesia, and I'm going to cause the gates of hell to not prevail against it. And whatever you bind upon earth, in other words, whatever you say it is not permitted on the earth, I will rule then from the court of heaven, and I will see to it that it's not permitted. And whatever you loose upon earth, I will loose it out of the court of heaven. And I think right now we need to take our authority as God's people in the earth. Father, you see the headlines. You see the things that are happening in...
Oh no, is he going to pray and then this is going to turn into like a prophecy, like a, what do you call it? Like a prophecy session or whatever? Prophecy session? False prophecy session?
Secret. You see the discussions and the things that are mobilizing, and you look at, Father, the rage and the hatred that, Father, certain tyrants of the earth and even those, Father, in other nations who hate Israel, they hate the United States, they hate the God of Israel, they even hate the God of the United States, and they hate Yeshua. But God, you are the one that is...
Yeshua is what Jesus' real name actually was. J's didn't exist at the time. A more faithful English version would be Yahshua. And sometimes people trade out the Y's for J's in some contexts. So actually a more faithful translation of Yeshua, of Jesus' real name, would be Josh, if you think about it. So... make sure you thank Josh for all you have this Thanksgiving.
Is the ruler and Lord over all things, and we exercise our authority right now, and we bind any force of darkness and attempt of the enemy to come and to steal, to kill, or destroy, or to bring about terroristic acts or harm our soldiers and our innocent people. And I cry out to you, God, not only for the United States, but Israel and for the nations of the earth. We are asking you in the court of heaven to bind up and restrain any attempt of the enemy now. And we are asking you, as we command the loosing of the restraining force of the Holy Spirit, but the goodness of God to be seen in the land of our living, that God, you will raise up strong leaders and willing people to shift things in the earth for your glory and for a generation of children that must see freedom like they've never seen before and live quiet and peaceful as you told us to pray in Scripture. And we ask this in Yeshua's name. Amen.
I like that he's using Yeshua now. That's kind of interesting. I mean, I don't like it. I just don't care about it one way or another, but it's kind of interesting to me. Anyways, I've seen some other movements on the far right, like Shane Vaughn, for example. Shane Vaughn started using the name Yeshua a lot. I really think they should just go with Josh as a more faithful translation, I guess you could say, of Jesus' name. Instead of Jesus, just call him Josh. I would love it if people just started calling him Josh. Okay.
Amen. Amen. Lance,
Amen.
you got something there?
Amen. Yeah, I do, Gene. You know that as Hank was praying, Job 38:11 came to me. We're a real faith audience, Flashpoint Army. Start to claim. The Lord said to the proud waves, which is like a metaphor for the human energy and activity that is demonically trying to stir up and foam up discontent. The Lord says, thus far and no further. The waves pound, they're violent, they kick at the door like you saw, but they only go up to a certain point. We must pray a divine cease and desist on the expansion of
divine cease and desist. I didn't know that God sent out legal letters to people. This is news to me.
Discontent. And we'll claim Job 38, verse 11.
Cease and desist letter basically is the letter that you send before you sue somebody. If you want them to stop and you don't want to spend the money on a lawsuit, send them a cease and desist that basically says we're going to take action if you don't stop this. And if they continue on anyways, then they take legal action. It's really a courtesy. Cease and desist letters are. I have received some. I received some from Nintendo when I was selling Christmas stars that looked like the Mario stars. I got a couple of letters from Nintendo over that. I also got a cease and desist letter from Epidemic Sound because I had a song of theirs in one of my videos or something like that, and they said that I did not have clearance. So they said, cease and desist your use of this song, or we will maintain the copyright, blah, 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 whatever. So cease and desist is pretty common. Again, it's a courtesy. It's nice.
Of discontent, and will claim Job 38, verse 11, not covered in much of our Western news, is the meeting they had in Riyadh with Erdogan, the president of Turkey.
Erdogan, you poor, you know what? I'm not that guy. I'm not going to insult. It's just like, this is just one more piece of the puzzle showing how these people have no idea what's going on, who these people are, what they've done. They've never even heard these names before. He probably read the name once and decided to run with that pronunciation instead of researching anything about this. This is just ridiculous. And there are some very miffed people outside my door right now who want you to know how miffed they are. And their method of communicating that miffery is by honking the holy heck out of their horns. So everybody now knows, probably, I don't know, thousands and thousands of people who are watching this, everybody knows how miffed they are. I hope that that brings them some peace of mind, knowing that everybody understands.
Is the meeting they had in Riyadh with Erdogan, the president of Turkey.
God, it's so funny.
Convening with the Saudis and Egypt and all the heads of Islamic and Arab states. And Erdogan was calling for...
He keeps doing it.
...for a unity amongst the fragmented forces of Islam, the Sunnis and the Shiites, come together in their war against the West and against Israel. And he's...
Okay, what? Erdogan in Turkey? That doesn't sound right. Turkey is a NATO ally. Why would Turkey encourage anybody to attack the United States? He would have to defend the United States if they attacked against the people he encouraged. What is he talking about? This can't be real, can it? Is this real? Please tell me this isn't real. If it is, then Erdogan's a fucking moron. And so is Lance Walnut, because he does not understand the cultural context here at all. Aside from all of that, Sunni and Shiite are two branches of Islam, kind of like Catholic and Protestant. Ultimately, the difference between them is who should lead Islam after Muhammad died. I think that's what it was really about. Like, should it be Muhammad's son? I think that that's one of the possible successors. Or should it be his second in command that's running the caliphate? Who should it be? There are a number of different... There's also Ismaili Muslims and a bunch of different types. Who all basically split because of the line of succession or a number of other reasons. Shiites, by and large, work with us, with the United States. Sunnis, by and large, hate the United States. The Sunni Muslims are the ones that attacked the U.S. on September 11th. Shia Muslims helped the United States battle the Sunnis. Iran being one of those Shia groups. Iran is actually largely Shia Muslim, surprisingly. And we did work with Iran after 9/11 to try to take out ISIS because it was in Iran's best interests. They didn't want ISIS running around the region either. So they sent their best general to work with U.S. forces to try to fight Iran, and were very successful with us. And then Donald Trump had that general killed. Assassinated, really, in a very, very public way, right before he left office. So anyways, Shia Muslims generally side with America unless they're in Iran, and Sunni Muslims generally side against America. For the record, Palestine is made up of Sunni Muslims, and a lot of the Sunni Muslims in Palestine did celebrate after 9/11 happened. I looked into this claim, and it is true. They did. They celebrated about 9/11. So I don't believe in human rights abuses anyways. I don't care what type of people they are, who it is, or anything. I don't care. It's not right for people to be murdered wantonly and indiscriminately the way that the Palestinians have been. So anyway.
He said our red line is Jerusalem. We don't know what he means by that, but he has an antichrist spirit of delusion, and he had 1 million of his...
Dude, I love that he's attacking a NATO ally right now. This is ridiculous on so many levels.
His own people out cheering for him against Israel. They're the greatest potential military problem we have because they are a nuclear power.
Are you kidding me? We're talking about, I'm sorry, not Iran. We're talking about Turkey, right? He thinks Turkey is a military problem for us? What? Dude, this is a joke. This dude thinks that Turkey is going to attack us with nukes. You cannot be serious. I mean, I just gave you the cultural context necessary to understand why this is so completely and totally absurd. We have had some weird relationships with Turkey in the past, with Erdogan specifically. Erdogan was dealing with a military coup a while back, and he called for help from the United States, and I think Obama was in charge at the time, and Obama basically just said, let's sit back and see how this plays out. I mean, he didn't say it, but he sat back and let it, saw how it was going to play out. And Erdogan succeeded in that battle. And so Obama sent troops in to help Erdogan after he won. God, dude. Oh, that's cold. That is cold as ice. Obama, you ice cold bitch. You got ice in your veins over there. Anyways, yeah, I don't like Erdogan. I think he's terrible, but that's neither here nor there.
But I pray that thus far and no further will apply to the president of Turkey and his aspiration to raise a new caliphate, even if this...
Turkey is a secular nation, not a Muslim nation, a secular nation. This guy doesn't know anything about the history, does he? Turkey is secular, guys. It has a secular government. What the fuck is going on?
Eventually comes together. It shall not happen now. And the good news is that the Arab nations, while they attended the meeting and they understood and approved of politically they had to align, they voted against sanctioning Israel and cutting off business with Israel because they do not want the spirit of a caliphate and war against the West. They want to see radical terror, Hamas, Hezbollah, dismantled, but they can't say it publicly.
You talking about Turkey? What is he talking about? I'm just lost, bro. By the way, somebody brought this up in my chat. Jen has cookies. Talking about the Ottoman Empire. Yeah, just a little brief history on the region. A caliphate is... I guess it's kind of like... God, what would you compare a caliphate to? I guess it's kind of like a region that is controlled by Muslims. And there have been a number of caliphates through the decades, through the centuries, through the generations. But the most famous one that we deal with now, or that we have dealt with recently, is the Ottoman Caliphate, also known as the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Caliphate stretched all the way across Turkey and down into that region in the Middle East and all over the place. Ottoman Empire controlled the whole area. Very, very influential, all the way up until 1923, I believe. Yeah, then it was, like, dissolved and fell apart into a billion different pieces, so anyway. Yeah, 1922 is when I'm seeing it officially ended. The title of Ottoman Sultan was eliminated in 1922. I'm not seeing anything about 1908 here, but I could be wrong. So anyway, give you a little context on that.
Wow. Yes, go ahead, Rick.
Well, I just want to...
Dude, Gene Bailey seems like he just doesn't want to be here right now. Is it just me?
Yes, go ahead, Rick.
Well, I just want to, just for any viewer out there that might say, well, you know, Hank's praying for this and Lance is talking about claiming this scripture, but how does that stop bombs and evil and all that kind of stuff? Listen, go back to the beginning of our country at the Constitutional Convention when Ben Franklin reminded everybody in the beginning of the contest when we were sensible of danger, we had daily prayer in this room for divine protection.
Okay, like all of this stuff is completely made up. It's it's retconned history. They've changed the history to be something other than what it actually was. And they changed it to be more of like the United States was a Christian nation, blah, blah, blah. They really want everybody to believe the U.S. was a Christian nation when it simply was not.
Our prayers were heard and they were graciously answered. All of us engaged in the struggle must have observed frequent instances of a superintending providence in our favor. But then Franklin asked, have we now forgotten this powerful friend? Do we imagine we no longer need his assistance? Guys, that's the least religious of the founding fathers other than maybe Thomas Paine. And he's calling on...
Well, Thomas Jefferson wasn't very religious either, for the record. In fact, none of them were except for John Adams. John Adams was a religious nutcase and absolutely terrible. John and Abigail Adams were fucking awful. But okay.
On the founders to prayer, exactly what Hank just did and exactly what Lance is telling us to do. Do not shortchange the power of prayer. Even the least religious founding fathers knew that it helped them overcome the greatest military power on the planet. We had no business taking on the greatest power on the planet, and we still won. So everything that Lance just said, everything that Hank prayed,
we had no business taking on the greatest power on the planet. Is he talking about, like, military power? Is he talking about Britain or England taking on England? The United States originally took on England? I mean, yeah, but we got help from the French, so it wasn't just us taking them on. I don't know what he's talking about.
Absolutely can happen.
It absolutely can. And if Brother Copeland was standing right here, he would say, remember the covenant that we have, what George Washington did there when he stood up and gave this country again, reiterated what happened in 1607.
This didn't happen, for the record. I'm sure most people probably know this, but what he's describing here is fabricated nonsense. This did not happen. George Washington did not swear the country over to Jesus or whatever in 1607. There's a famous painting from 1970, I think, that portrays George Washington as standing in front or kneeling in front of his horse with his sword in the ground or whatever. Here you go. This is the Here you go. This is the painting right here. This is a fake event. This did not actually take place, but evangelical extremists like Kenneth Copeland believe that it did take place, and that it was Kenneth Copeland. I'm sorry, and that it was George Washington swearing allegiance for the country over to Jesus or whatever. And they also believe that George Washington and the other founding fathers and Donald Trump were Jewish. They believe they're all Jewish. And they were from the other 10 tribes of Israel that left and went up over the Caucasus Mountains and then eventually made their way to the British Isles and blah, blah, blah. None of that actually happened, but they believe they're Jewish, and they believe this is new Israel, and the United States has a new covenant with God, and blah, 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 blah. So anyways, absolutely psychotic, and that's how you arrive at Trump being the Messiah for these people. Dead serious. Anyway, this is just insane, dude. These people are absolutely insane. I think this is the end.
There at Cape Henry, he reiterated the covenant that we have. We will be your people. You will be our God. And we're going to see.
That didn't ever happen. He never said that. There's no evidence that any of this stuff took place. None. They just claim whatever the hell they want to claim.
America change. So keep that in mind, faith people. We must continue to see God move in that direction. But it's going to take you and I standing up like those great people.
Take me and you standing up. You and myself is another good option. God, these people.
God move in that direction. But it's going to take you and I standing up like those great people that have done before us, standing up and saying, we are behind what God says. We stand with Israel, and if you don't like it, that's okay.
See, that's the thing. God never said that. You interpreted an ancient book that's, been mistranslated 16 billion times throughout the centuries as saying that.
But this is the way, standing up and saying, we are behind what God says. We stand with Israel, and if you don't like it, that's okay. But this is where we are. We stand. I've got a very special guest coming on. Many of you old enough will remember Victoria Jackson on Saturday Night Live.
Unfamiliar with who this person is. I get, that's the end of the clip, I guess. But let's just jump forward, see who this person is. We may end up watching this episode later. So if you guys, okay, this is it, I guess.
Do you experience any challenges to your faith as a member of cast of SNL?
Have you been persecuted on Saturday Night Live by anybody to the left of hunting the homeless for sport? Were you persecuted? Are you a persecuted minority? That's really the question here. Anyway, I'll tell you what. If you want to see more of this stuff, stick around. I'll have another video releasing about this soon. And yeah, let me know what you think about these people. This is absolutely insane.